Today I will be reading Chapter 6 of If You Can't Manage Them, You Can't Teach Them. We will be starting on page 131 at the top of the page with Question to Parents. What teacher behaviors do you see in classrooms where successful learning happens for your child? Sean's answer: hands down, enthusiasm in a well disciplined classroom. Eric and Sarah's answer: consistency with student expectations and guidelines, sincerity in communication with students. Catherine's answer: they have respectful classrooms. They don't have quiet classrooms, and their classrooms tend to seem chaotic to a casual observer. But a high level of respect is present to and from each individual, including the teacher. Cheryl's answer: from what my five children have said over the years, I have concluded this. If my child feels that he or she has an equal chance to learn because the leader of the class, the teacher, has control over the class, then the focus of the class becomes everything the teacher does to make the subject interesting or fun. Expectations. This is a word that is constantly tossed about in the world of education. We're told that teachers must have high expectations for all students. School boards, administrators, state education agencies, and legislators have high expectations for teachers. Parents and community members have all sorts of expectations for teachers and for students. Teachers have expectations of parents, and what about the students? Well, they certainly have expectations too of what will happen when they sit in a classroom and live in a school. There's little doubt that expectations are omnipresent, but I'm not certain that all stakeholders in education have clear ideas about their own expectations, let alone any sort of agreement on the list. Even more, I doubt all of the people in this chain of expectations are sure how to make those expectations come to life in the classroom. Most of the talk among educators and parents about high expectations revolves around academics. But what about expectations for behavior? Where did those fit into the picture? And how do all the expectations gel together to build a caring, successful learning community? Here's a strong bias of mine, one formed from my own experience and that of many teachers I have mentored. To implement high academic expectations, you must first have high expectations for behavior. It cannot be the other way around. If you want to create a rigorous curriculum where students are expected to stretch to high academic standards, then you must first concentrate on establishing a climate of high behavioral standards. Sterling academic ideals won't be useful if students do not learn processes for living and working together respectfully. Once high behavioral standards are successfully implemented, you can move with ease into working on academic excellence and then joyfully watch students exceed those academic expectations. Expectations. What and why? What? Let's begin to get clear about what we mean by expectations. This noun names a huge, wide category. It covers the idea of what and how for everything students do in the classroom, and sometimes outside the classroom too. It ranges from what they bring to class to how they treat each other or sharpen their pencils to how they approach their studies. When you think about it, we have dozens, maybe hundreds of expectations for students. What gets the most attention is the expectations that adults have for the kids, how they should conduct themselves, and how they should perform in their classroom. Often, adults hold these expectations closely, and students don't even fully get what they are. First rule about expectations is that students must understand what they are, what they mean, and how it looks to meet them. Never assume that students, even teenagers, come to your class automatically understanding expectations for how to act in a classroom or for what it means to be a good student. Even if you have posted expectations on the wall or read them loudly and enthusiastically, do not assume students know how these translate into action. In a classroom, expectations generally fall into these two categories. 1. Procedures. Procedure is a set of specific steps to follow in performing a task, such as getting a hall pass, contributing to a class discussion, or putting together a report. Procedures make most of the stuff that goes on in the classroom operate more smoothly. Every classroom needs procedures for organizational tasks, such as getting and storing materials or sharpening pencils, for how we get along together, such as handling conflict, disagreeing, or behaving in discussions, for instructional tasks, such as completing assignments or turning in homework, and for academic habits, such as note taking, working hard, or doing your best. Students learn clear steps for tasks they'll do daily, and these tasks then become automatic. 2. Rules. A rule is a principle to guide conduct. Most classrooms have at least a few rules, and they are generally connected to clearly stated consequences that ensue if the rules are not followed. Some classrooms call these commitments, agreements they have about how they are going to live and work with one another respectfully. In my experience, a classroom that has reasonable working procedures for most classroom tasks will need few rules. This is because most troubles in a classroom are the result of no procedures. Inappropriate procedures that students don't fully understand, or procedures that don't work. Why? Clear working expectations, rules, and procedures offer the same benefits as routines described in Chapter 5. They offer certainty and safety. Kids know what to do and how to do it. Procedures that are discussed, explained, modeled, and practiced bring organization and smooth flow to a classroom. They help the teacher and students cultivate a climate that gives cognitive and emotional space needed for real learning. When expectations are put into practice, they promote responsibility and togetherness. Things work better, will get along better, kids can feel pride in their classroom community. Many, I assure you, many behavior problems that might interfere with learning are eliminated or reduced. Procedures. Follow these guidelines when you set and communicate procedures to students. 1. Make sure you outline procedures both for behavior and for academics. Consider the kinds of examples shown on page 137. 2. Procedures must be simple, reasonable, fair, and doable. 3. Each procedure must be appropriate for the developmental level of the students. This is part of the reasonable requirement. 4. Put them in writing for yourself and also for students, so that you can be consistent with them. 5. Procedures are worthless if students don't get them. Start the first day of school, explain them thoroughly, discuss them, demonstrate them, answer your students' questions about them, talk about why you need them, show them what it is meant by take your turn when contributing to classroom discussion, or write assignments in your student planner. 6. Practice all procedures right away. Try them out. Make sure they work. Practice them until they become automatic. By doing this together, students will be improving the management of the classroom. They'll begin to take ownership of the procedures when they see how they make classroom life better. 7. Follow the procedures yourself. Don't take special liberties. Model them for students. This will show you that you take them seriously. It will help students get them down pat. 8. Stop periodically to evaluate how the student procedures are working. If a procedure is not working, if it is too hard to follow, or if it needs some changes, be willing to adapt it. 9. Make sure you have a plan for communicating your classroom procedures to other stakeholders. For example, how will you let parents know about homework procedures or what to do about missed assignment when a student is absent? How will you coordinate field trips with other classes? 10. If you teach in a teaming situation, work with teammates to have consistent procedures across the team. Page 137 is full of sample procedures under 3 different categories of procedures for classroom management and organization, instructional procedures, and learning skills and habits procedures. Page 138 starts with rules. Follow these guidelines when you set and communicate rules to students. 1. Carefully ponder what your rules will be. Decide ahead of time what the consequences will be for not following the rules. 2. Limit the number of rules. An individual rule loses its power as the list grows longer. Each one must be simple, reasonable, developmentally appropriate, and possible to follow. Students should be able to memorize them quickly. Consider the example shown on page 141. Make sure you include rules that apply to behavior as well as to academic activity. 3. State and write each rule in language that can be understood and followed. State rules in positive terms so that students will know what to do. 4. Starting the first day, explain the rules. Be prepared to talk about why of the process, why rules are needed for a group of people to live and work together, why this rule, what difference each rule makes. Ask, what would classroom life be like without this rule? 5. Illustrate, demonstrate, and elaborate on each rule. Remember, your students will not automatically know what it means to work hard, to come to class prepared, to be kind to others, or to be responsible. 6. Post the rule in a prominent place. 7. Share the rules with parents and other stakeholders. Put them in your parent handbook and on your class website. When you communicate with parents, tell them why the rules are important and what difference they will make in your classroom. 8. Starting the first day, practice the rules, roleplay the behaviors, show examples of following and not following the rules. Anything to help make them habits. By doing this together, students will be improving the management of the classroom. They'll begin to take ownership of the rules when they see how rules make classroom life better. 9. Throughout the year, keep telling and showing students how these behaviors look in the classroom. Make sure students understand that this is not something they hear on the first day of school and then forget. These will become a part of their classroom life at all times. Practice daily, discuss often, continually help students see how following each of the rules translate into actual action. Ask such questions as, how can we tell if someone is being responsible? What are the behaviors that demonstrate this? If you are doing your best work, what does this look like? 10. Spell out consequences for not adhering to the rules. State these clearly and administer them consistently. See Chapter 7 for my advice on consequences and follow through. I'll just say here that rules mean nothing if you do not follow them to help students learn them and follow them. 11. Adhere to the rules yourself, show enthusiasm for them, model them for students. This will show that you take them seriously. Constantly help students understand and articulate how these make life together rewarding and how they will help everyone learn better. 12. If you teach in a teaming situation, work with teammates to have consistent rules and consequences across the team. 13. Your students must understand, as well, that they will be held to all the general rules of the school. Most schools have expectations about behavior on school grounds, about things such as drugs, alcohol, use of cell phones, weapons, dress codes, profanity, internet use, and even gum chewing. Following these is the part of the expectation of your classroom. Here's one more consideration about this process. As you consider the behaviors that are most important for, or most detrimental to, safe and successful classroom life, you will likely have some pet peeves in mind. Each of us has a right to preserve our sanity in the place where we spend many hours each day. I suggest to teachers what they answer this question: what 3 behaviors, if you could eliminate them, would inspire you to want to teach 7 days a week? The top one of my list is blurting, interrupting, speaking out of turn, or interjecting something irrelevant when someone else is talking. This drives me nuts. Even though this falls under another rule, be respectful, I single it out and have a separate rule about it because it is such a pattern for middle school kids, and I feel it needs special emphasis. You might not think about your own list of 3 behaviors that are not negotiable in your classroom. On page 141, there are sample rules of varying sizes. Starting on page 142 with academic expectations. Let's get back to the topic of academic expectations. School is about learning. It's our job as teachers to know our students' learning styles and abilities and help them reach their potential and stretch beyond. As I said earlier, there's little chance that they will meet high standards if their school environment is chaotic or unsafe. Clear behavioral and procedural expectations, I repeat myself, provide the safety that sets minds free to soar. Once you have the framework in place for a functional, well managed setting, where students know what to do and how to get along, you can focus on actions to move students academically, to challenge their thinking, inspire their desire to learn, and help them achieve their highest potential. In my view, high academic expectations start and finish with the teacher's belief in every student. The teacher must believe and show that belief that all students can learn, grow, and excel. Students must be sure that you believe they can learn and can do things that are even harder than they might think they can do. If they do not know this unequivocally, you can forget about high standards. Well, some of your students may be intrinsically motivated already, but even those kids need your belief. You will show your belief in them, or lack of it, by comments, attitudes, behaviors, tone of voice, responses to them, gestures, facial expressions, body language, enthusiasm for learning, preparedness, lessons, and energy. You must teach students what high standards are. What does high mean? It means to succeed at everything you possibly can. It means to accomplish, master, understand, and do tasks, concepts, and processes at your grade level and beyond, or beyond what you are used to doing. You teach them by showing the difference between low and high standards. You must teach students how to reach high standards. This means a lot of showing and talking. Talk about the following behaviors and discuss what they look like in school. Give examples of success and failure. Watch for these behaviors. Affirm the successes. Keep on top of this constantly. A caution about the following list. Teachers say things like this to students all the time. This is not just a list of things to say. I guarantee these are kinds of statements that go in one ear and out the other. Help them get what it means to be a student and to be a successful student. I repeat, you must show students precisely what each of these components of high standards looks like. Be prepared, do your work well, do all your work, do your work on time, take homework seriously, turn in your homework, try hard, put forth effort, bring all your supplies to class, be ready to learn, study for tests, welcome feedback, listen, participate, share your ideas, finish what you start, reflect on your work, make good decisions, push yourself beyond the easy, don't settle for mediocre work, try new things, ask for help. Don't sit down, keep moving. Keep on top of the students' work in progress. I don't have a desk. I'm constantly among my students, always, paying attention to how they are doing, who is lost, who needs a push, who needs a scaffold. Model high expectations. Have high expectations for yourself. Demonstrate in the way you do your job every behavior you try to teach them about academic standards. Expectations for the teacher. Here's the first expectation for the teacher: that he or she believes that students can reach high standards. Hundreds of research studies verify the transformative effects of the teacher's expectations for student growth. In his classic examination of leadership, Warren Bennis, 1994, found that the high expectations of teachers for their students was alone sufficient to cause an increase of 25 points in student IQ scores. This is not just a call to some philosophical idea. It is not enough to say you believe all students can learn and excel. Look at every one of your students and say that and believe it about him or her. Treat all students consistently and equitably. Tune in, show up. So far in this book, I've been adamant about being tuned in to yourself and your students as human beings. You can't promote good learning, teach acceptable behavior, run an orderly classroom, or teach content effectively without being present to your students. Without the relationships, respect, and procedures discussed in chapters 1 through 6, be committed to teaching an academic course of study, and teach it well. I am just as adamant about this part of the teacher's role. This is what the job of a teacher is. Create an academic environment that says, we are here to learn. I believe you can learn. I'm here to help you. When Warren Bennis reported the astounding effects of high teacher expectations, he made it clear that high standards must be accompanied by supports necessary to help students reach them. The absence of this, he said, would not only be ludicrous but cruel and frustrating, robbing students of their intrinsic motivation for learning. Set high behavioral and academic expectations for yourself. Be prepared. Be on time. Be enthusiastic. Stretch yourself. Students must see you epitomizing a good learner. Don't let yourself or your lessons get stale. Be consistent. Come to school every day from the first day, assuming that learning will take place. Start class on time. Every time, give your students a clear message that this class is so important that we will get underway right away. As soon as the bell rings, support, demonstrate, and enforce all behavioral expectations. I want to help teachers, including myself, consider what it means to have high expectations for behavior in academics within their classroom. Return to page 130 at the beginning of the chapter, review what you wrote about your current expectations, pay attention to the ones you said you were working. Think about why those are working. This is your starting point for developing other rules and procedures that work. I have tried to identify characteristics and behaviors of teachers who have high expectations and help students meet them. To conclude this chapter, I offer two self reflections based on my discoveries about these characteristics and behaviors. I use these at several points throughout the year to help myself focus on setting and modeling high expectations. One focuses on expectations for behavior, the other focuses on academic expectations. You will find these on pages 147 through 150. And with that, that will end chapter 6 of If You Can't Manage Them, You Can't Reach Them.